Hi, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Tammy Lindberg. I'm the Lower Adolescent Program Coordinator at Great River, Program Director now. I'm also a little rusty at Zoom, so that's a good thing. I'm super excited to have students back. A little bit about me. I've been at Great River since 2008, working with the middle years program is my favorite because I always sort of say it's like you can watch them grow up. So thanks for being here. I'll kind of run through the slideshow and then we'll have time at the end for questions. So let's see. There's, I think, the Q&A feature that works really well to ask questions in. The chat is kind of hard to monitor when you're presenting, if I remember correctly. So try that, but always feel free to raise your hand and I will probably see that too. So this info session is really focused on how do students get graded or assessed at Great River School. So at Great River, we implemented standards-based grading last year and a 1 through 7 scale in the LA and the UA. So this is a continuous process that will grow up with the students as they progress into UA. So we'll talk about the purpose of grading and assessments, grading scales in the 7 through 12. Standards-based grading, types of assessment and assignments, both formative and summative, and then why we do this, sort of the equity piece of this grading that felt really important during the pandemic and also coming off of in the fall of 2020, some reckonings with our social justice and our policing system here in Minnesota and around our world. So we'll jump right in. So the purpose of assessment and grading is first. So what we really aim for students to be able to do through being assessed and or being graded on their work is to demonstrate their learning, receive what we call feed forward, so feedback, but ahead of that final summative big project. We want to sort of be assessing before we finally, and giving feedback before the final assessment, so that the student is really able to demonstrate what they know. And we want them to learn how to learn. And this piece is a really big one in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. This learning how to learn through Cornell notes, cooperative learning, those kind of things are a really big piece of this. And also focusing on a personal growth, that you are really, as a person, never done learning, and you're always going to be able to learn more and dig deeper. That is coming straight out of both standards-based grading pedagogy and Montessori pedagogy. So the purpose for guides is to really be able to inform and improve through formative assessments our teaching and our learning. So right now I'm teaching a cooking class in the kitchen, and I'm really able to understand what part of a particular writing assignment that we finished up called Claim, Evidence, and Reasoning a few weeks ago, what part of that students need the most help with. And then target my teaching towards that so that students can learn that. And then gather and analyze trends overall. So right now we're looking at the humanities and lit courses and looking really at what are the big overall trends from Q1 in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And what are we seeing and where can we make improvements on our practice? And for caregivers, some insight to understand student progress, strengths, and areas for growth. And that's mostly coming through Schoology. The feed forward or the feedback on the formatives and summatives is really coming through Schoology. So leaving comments, the specific numerical grade or mark, and also the papers that are handed back and things like that. So that's why we grade. It's really just to grow and be better at what we're learning. So we have a 7-point grading scale, which is much different than the 100-point grading scales that I know I had in 1999 when I was a senior in high school. So the 7-point scale, we'll walk through it a little bit. There we go. So we have a 1 through 7-point scale for feedback. And you're likely already seeing in Schoology some numbers. 1s and 2s are an area of concern that we're concerned about and communicating to you, the family, and the students as well, that we're concerned and we want to meet with you, we want to chat with you. So this is a area where you all as students can come and chit chat with us. When you're getting 3s in 7th grade, it's not so much of an area of concern because you're brand new to really the whole lower adolescent. But it's really highlighting limited proficiency. You're still learning, and that's okay. As 7th and 8th graders, that's okay. That's where we want to be. We start worrying about juniors and seniors and 10th years that are getting primarily 3s. There we start worrying. 9th grade, a little bit. Nearing proficiency is a 4, and proficient is sort of like a B, like where you know what you're talking about. Mastery or meeting and exceeding are your 6s and 7s. So those are pretty high marks, looking like A's and A minuses that we might remember from either last year at a different school or as caregivers when we were in school. So we use the 7-point scale, 7th through 12th grade. It's the same scale. It means the same thing. And we want to keep our feedback consistent. And it's something that you can rely on. So, oh my goodness. There we go. Number 2, this grading system is actually very common worldwide, not super common in Minnesota, but it is present in a bunch of IB schools in the state and in the world. And it allows us to give that direct and clear feedback on learning objectives, which are the Minnesota state standards or sometimes the skills of the course. And so we'll take a look more deeply at that. But it focuses on the growth of the student rather than how many assignments did you turn in over time, and penalizing a student if they miss an assignment. We don't do that anymore. So at the end of a learning cycle, these numbers, the 1s through 7s, change into letter grades because of our college access. And we want to make sure that all colleges still are able to interpret what the grading scale means, the number. So we change it into the correlating letter grade. And perhaps this changes in a few years when the colleges catch up to the rest of the secondary schools and our practices. Perhaps we keep this. Time will tell how this evolves over time. So you'll see the numbers in Schoology and you'll see the letters in PowerSchool. And the PowerSchool letters get put in at the end of the term. So if you're a 7th and 8th grader, you just finished up a learning cycle with humanities or occupations, and you should be seeing within the next maybe week or so letters popping into PowerSchool, but you are already seeing numbers in Schoology. Both 7, 8, and 9th years are seeing numbers in Schoology. So there is a school of walk video that you are, so if you are one that really wants to learn more about standards-based grading and the why and the how, the school of walk video that's linked right here is really good. Students have already watched this once, though we typically show it again in kind of December when they've had enough time to forget, but that grades start really meaning something to the student. And they start asking questions about, what does a 2 and a 3 mean? What does a 4 mean? Those some are already there. So we're recommending this video again on individual bases too. But what it means at Great River, and what does it mean for a student? It allows us, like it's written, students and guide to measure progress and growth on specific skills over time. So if this is this grading scale here is assessing the skill about rearranging formulas, we can see that in their first 2 formative assessments, this person got a 2 and a 3, which means that we're concerned. There's intervention needed. But then by the 3rd formative, they did just fine. They got a 4, and on their summative, they were able to demonstrate proficiency. So that is, you can see the progression of the sort of learning. And the beautiful part is that at Great River, this is what determines your final grade, is those summatives. So we aren't penalizing a student for increasing their knowledge or acquiring skills in the beginning. We are assessing student growth over time. What you will see in the gradebook, if this isn't turned in, you will see zeros, mostly because it sends a message, it sends a notification to families that the work is missing, so that we don't actually know as guides how the student is doing. We don't have any information. So the 0 is there, and the 0 can always be changed once that work gets turned in. And so why did we change from this percentage scale? This is a really important 4-part piece. So we really believe in giving students clear, efficient, straightforward, and understandable measurements as they develop. So that feed forward part is really important to us, and standards-based grading helps us implement that and grade just the summative part, grade just the demonstration of learning at the end of the learning cycle. By placing the sort of importance on learning objectives, it enables us to give clear and direct feedback on how the student is demonstrating their knowledge on key specific points. And we'll keep going into more detail there. But as we keep progressing throughout the year, but what it really means is if I'm assessing on knife skills in my cooking class, I'm understanding that that's the objective is to be able to dice and mince and chop. And at the beginning, students aren't going to be very proficient at that skill. But at the end, now they can dice and chop with the best of them. So I want to be grading their final performance of their ability with knife skills. And it is more equitable. Number 3, it's more equitable. It focuses on what they know and they can demonstrate rather than, are you missing an assignment? And did you have a bad week so you didn't turn in 2 assignments, and now I'm going to penalize you with zeros that never go away, or just no data. So it is a much more equitable way to grade students, and it focuses on the intrinsic motivation that all students are capable of, and one of those Montessori principles. So it really helps us live out our mission and vision as well. So there are 2 types of assignments and assessments. There are formative and there are summative. Formative ones are ones that allow students that feedback cycle, that feed forward cycle. They're the smaller tasks, the more day-to-day, where, it could be a worksheet, it could be the math practice sets. And the quiz for the math is the summative that is evaluating what the student can demonstrate that they know. I think if we compare it to soup that my students made, the formative assessment is how the students think they did on the soup. And of course, or the chef, and the summative is how their family members think they did making the soup, or the faculty members think they did. So when the chef is tasting the soup, that's our formative. When the guests are shaping the soup, that's the summative. And the summative assignments and assessment count towards the final overall course grade. But those formative ones where you're, again, learning the skills and the knowledge that you need, don't count towards the final course grade. So our goal is to begin with structure, support, accountability, and release into independence. Those formative assignments, they are not, quote, worth anything in the gradebook, but they are essential and worth learning for progress and for understanding. It's hard. I was just talking to a student today who is missing a couple summatives in biology. It's real hard to pass biology summatives if you don't know the intricate details of the cell. You really can't just know that inherently anymore. So they're essential for learning, but we don't want to penalize students for their progress in learning. So there are students who don't demonstrate this formative assignments. We're calling them back on Wednesday during indie work and requiring them to come to different independent works. Maybe it's we're all working on math set 6. We're all missing that. Or quiz 6. Let's make sure we all do that group independent work. Or today, students that were missing a summative from the last learning cycle in 7-8, or for 9th years, they were missing a summative from Patricia's Spanish class, had to go back and do individual independent work with that guide and really be held accountable to making sure that it was done. So less freedom and gradually training into that independence, which is another Montessori tenet of what we do and how we do it. So what happens if they're not completing formative work? We have some other universal interventions that we do for all students in the 7-8-9, a work journal, which is sort of a precursor to a planner. And some students are ready for a planner and some are not. So we have those types of universal interventions. And synchronous indie work means we're all doing indie work at the same time on Wednesdays and really helping students figure out how indie work looks and how to best structure their time in 7-8-9. And when they move into 10-11-12, they're able to plan out their own indie work much better and get what they need done. So we aim, though the pandemic makes this really hard when we're switching between quarantine learners and in-person learners, we try really hard to update every 2 weeks. And so there should be regular feedback in your classes and then a summative grade in there shortly after the learning cycle or that big summative is done. But that takes a while to grade all those assignments. So, and then we try to make contact with families on Fridays for non-engaging students. And we're not really seeing a lot of non-engaging students. So if you haven't reached or gotten an email yet, that's okay. For the most part, students are happy to be back in person and happy to be learning with their peers. So that's pretty great. Then we do family meetings to figure out what we can best help. with, and tier 1 or tier 2 interventions after that. So that's sort of what you can expect. So in Schoology, formatives have an F in the front of them, and summatives have an S. So that helps you as students and families really understand, is this a formative? Is this something I'm growing at? Or is this something I'm demonstrating my learning? And ultimately, is this showing up in my final grade? Do I need extra support with this one? Schoology, we generally at the lower adolescent level leave it up to families to kind of figure out what frequency to check Schoology with. You know, if your student is able to organize. A couple questions you can ask is, can I see your work journal? Or are they able to complete chores at home? Do they get really sort of frazzled when you ask a couple step question? If they're not able to do those things, checking Schoology more often with your student is recommended. Having your student open up their Schoology page and sort of walk you through each of their classes and what they're missing helps the student understand that this is their responsibility and you are sort of a helper or a consultant in their academic journey. And that, of course, you'll be there to help support them in what they need. So you are able to see if in the student's gradebook or Schoology, you're able to see their grades. So if you click on Gradebook, you can see that it's broken up into two sections, a formative and a summative, and what they are sort of averaging out of a 3 and a 2 here for their formatives, how well they're doing, and how well they're doing on their summatives. Sometimes on their summatives, you get a rubric. That's what that little icon means. And Neville got a 9 out of 14. That means there were 2 data points, 2 objectives on that rubric that total up to 14. And it kind of equals out to about a 5 or a 6 and correlates the word is gone, calculates, I guess, to the 7-point scale, even though it was out of a 14. It recalculates and averages it with the other summatives. So, and again, these are the ones that determine overall. These are the ones that are showing us data and how the student is growing. Sometimes there are like comments like this that says incomplete, and that helps you know that the work is missing or incomplete. And then there'll oftentimes be a little bubble, a thought bubble that helps you hear from the guide what they had to say about the particular assignment. And we are nearing the end of a nearly 26-minute slideshow. That growth mindset is a key point here. And what we're really looking and hoping for is to grow a self-efficacy, a confidence in the student that they can do this work. It doesn't mean keep persevering, even though all the odds are stacked against you. We're really looking to expand possibilities. We're looking to grow and refine, and not praise, but give authentic feedback, and start to see our teachers as guides and coaches. That's actually why teachers have been called guides since 2006 at Great River because we are guides and coaches, not teachers that can have a tendency in very traditional schools to fill up a glass rather than help the student build their knowledge. And tapping into curiosity with our students as learners and giving them space and support to learn and grow rather than, oh, well, you didn't do very well on this one, you're on your own. That space and support feels really supportive to students and helps. What we're seeing now after a year of it is helping students understand and dive in more fully to the work. So I just wanted to sort of like touch on where we're going in lower adolescent. Of course, there's all the academic standards, and these are some of the like habits of effective learning. We want students to be able to plan out their independent work time. A successful ninth year knows how to do this, has planned it out and used their time well. And they do that through this executive functioning skills of teaching or of using a planner. We want them to be able to know and interpret how to use Schoology because, of course, the grades become more weighty in 10, 11, and 12. If you are looking at trade schools or colleges, sometimes those grades are more impactful in the 10, 11, 12. So we want you to be able to interpret Schoology and approach and talk to guides about their work. That's a big one. Talking to guides, it's really hard for some students and it's not hard for other students. So be reflective and curious about your work and be able to work cooperatively with others. Do your fair share of the group task and also be able to see other points of view and actively listen to others. So I will highlight that there are some graduation requirements that I'll send along on here because they didn't make it into this slideshow. The student does need to graduate from Great River 4 years of English or literature and 4 years of the social studies classes. They also, for Minnesota state standards, have to pass biology and chemistry or physics. So one of the two you have to take as well. So since students have the opportunity to take English or literature, social studies and biology right now, it's important to pass those classes. We also have a requirement of 2 years of a foreign language program. So for a lot of students, that's taking Spanish here at Great River. And then some helpful links are all linked here. This Boston Herald news article is about standards-based grading, our practices, and our grading scale if you want to see it. It's super detailed, so it is not appropriate for a presentation. And some upcoming dates. If you're a student or you are a student that's wanting to sign up for school winter sports, November 5th is the deadline. And you can sign up. Or you can you can sign up and find out more information by clicking that link or pick up a paper registration from Holly at the front desk. And then conferences are November 4th and 5th. So if you're looking for that link to sign up I'll send that out along too. So let's see. I see no questions, I think, and no raised hands, which I either did a really good job or I confused you thoroughly. So feel free to drop notes in the Q&A or raise your hand. Or you can just sign off if you have no further questions. That's fine too. And I am super appreciative for those of you that are here. And I'll also send the recording out. So thanks for coming. Thanks, Melissa. It is some forward-thinking grading practices that are hard to understand sometimes. So if people do have questions, I am happy to answer them. And I will also say, we are young at our practice of standards-based grading. So we're getting better at this every day too. Well, great. I will sign off. Oh, question, yay. And Karen, yeah, if you want to unmute, you sure can.
Yep, can you hear me?
Yeah, yep.
Great. Okay, I sent a question in the Q&A. I'm not sure if you didn't receive it.
It is.
Okay, yeah, I sent it twice, so I'm not
Yeah.
sure if I'm doing something wrong
Yeah.
in the Q&A.
I think there was maybe just a delay or something, but Schoology is proving to be really confusing for students right now. I'm having students a lot of times email me, submit things online and turn it in. And I'm like, guys, I can't, I can't keep track of it all. So it is something that I think guides are struggling to figure out, because it does work better for digital assignments that you've done on a Google Doc to just submit it, or like a picture you've taken to just submit it. But then some things are paper that you want the student to fill out in class, and that's a formative. So you as a guide want them to turn it in. So it's a both. It's a yes and. They should be turning things online and in person. And if things are confusing, reaching out to the guide to ask questions is usually the best option to go through. Sometimes the students are confused, or sometimes the students forgot. So the student might not always have the answer too.
Right, and so can you still hear me? I want to make sure
Yep.
I'm not, okay, great. So I'm looking at one of the emails that I received as your children's weekly Schoology summary. What I see is course summary and a column that says grade. In parentheses, it says current grading period, and then attendance. So are the scores that I'm seeing in that email the summative or the formative, or is it just a matter of I need to just log on and actually look at Schoology because the emails don't effectively communicate what's going on?
It might be a weird thing that logging on to Schoology to help figure out what Schoology wants or is trying to tell you, and then figuring out their sort of code. Every single learning management system out there isn't perfect and can be maddeningly frustrating. So
Right.
there are parts, and if you wanted, we could look through, like you could come into school or do it over Zoom and have some support there too, or we could take a look at that at conferences.
Okay, that sounds good. I mean, I think it's probably just a matter of it's not easy to decipher from the email summary. It's just a matter of actually logging on, which I haven't done yet, I confess. So thank you.
Yeah, well, we're not that far into the year, so no worries. Thank you for your question. Okay, well, if there are no further questions, I will say good night. Feel free to always email me if you have any questions. You can just respond to the email that I send out. And I appreciate your time. Thanks, everyone.